still to come on the program. A threat of force against the migrants on the border. Is Washington adding fuel to the fire, some ask? Welcome back. You're watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. The migrant caravan that U.S. President Donald Trump rallied against during the midterm elections has finally arrived after U.S. Border Patrol fired tear gas at migrants on Sunday. Mexico is now asking Washington for a full investigation into what it called non-lethal weapons directed towards Mexican territory. Let's take a look.
This, the U.S. Mexico border on Sunday, a major crossing at San Isidro near San Diego. Would-be asylum seekers throwing projectiles over the border wall, some trying to make a run for it and get across. Border guards responding with tear gas, and cars backed up for several kilometers as officials closed this busy crossing. U.S. President Donald Trump, Mexico should move the flag-waving migrants, many of whom are stone-cold criminals, back to their countries. Do it by plane, do it by bus, do it any way you want, but they are not coming into the USA. We will close the border permanently if need be. Congress, fund the wall. The day had begun peacefully, with thousands of migrants now in the Mexican border town of Tijuana. They're part of several caravans of people desperate to be admitted into the United States, traveling for weeks from Central American countries, mainly Honduras. And now many in Mexico said to be growing angry over the migrants' presence. The Mexican government saying more than 36 migrants were arrested this weekend and promising to deport those who try to rush the U.S. border. Mexican officials claim to have sent more than 11,000 home over the past month and say total deportations to Central America for the year are expected to hit 100,000. But migrants keep arriving. They say they have nowhere else to go, and they pray that the U.S. will let them in. Washington insisting it will hear asylum cases, but only of those who follow the legal routes to and across the border.
So how will the U.S. and Mexico handle the migrant caravan? To find out, in Washington, we are joined by Arturo Sarukhan, former Mexican ambassador to the U.S. Also in Washington, we have Basima Al-Ghussan, who is a political analyst of the Truman National Security Project and former advisor to the Obama administration. Finally, in Mexico City, Laura Carlson, director of the Americas program of the Center for International Policy. I want to welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to our program. First of all, Ambassador Sarukhan, do you see any solution in sight?
It's going to be a long way away. There are no structural, long-term solutions to the issue of labor and migrant displacement coming from Central America, whether it's due to the security circumstances in Honduras and El Salvador, or to the economic challenges, mainly from the rural sector in Guatemala. What we're seeing on the Mexican-U.S. border today is one century BC solutions to 21st century challenges.
Agree with that terminology, one century BC solution to the 21st century problem. Ms. Carlson, you are in Mexico right now.
Yes, well, I don't know if I would characterize it exactly like that, but it's certainly true that there are no quick fixes to this problem. This is a problem that's been building up for years because of the conditions in Central America, many of them caused by U.S. policies, especially the political crisis in Honduras. As we know, most of these migrants are Honduran. In addition, we have the broken immigration system in the United States, and instead of responding to the need to process asylum cases that are arriving more and more each day, and this has been going on for a long time. It's not just this group that happened to get together in a much larger group than has happened before. Instead of processing those, they're taking a militarized solution, which just aggravates the situation.
Talking about that, we have to go to Ms. Al-Hussein. Of course, you worked for the former administration. This administration, though, has been characterizing its policy, particularly regarding its policy toward the migrants, very different from the earlier one. So, Ms. Al-Hussein, how do you see the results so far? Is there any solution in sight from Washington? And remember, it's not just the White House, but also the other parts and branches of the government.
Yes, that is an excellent question, and we have seen a number of inconsistencies in the Trump administration in response to a number of policies. We know that the Trump administration is a strong advocate for building the border wall, but even if President Trump is able to get financial support from Congress, which is highly unlikely now that the Democrats have taken control of the House, the wall wouldn't be constructed for years. And as we know, this is a crisis that's going on at present. Although I do think we might see some hope in Mexico with the new president-elect who will be taking office on December 1st. He has made it clear that he's interested in pioneering a sort of Marshall Plan that would lead to investments in the southern part of Mexico to help create jobs and opportunities for the people who are fleeing from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. And so it might be worth the United States investment and money to invest in some opportunities for these people to be taken care of properly in Mexico.
I see. So what can the Central American migrants expect really when they reach the Mexico-U.S. border? If you take a look at history, 2018, now 7,000 migrants have walked from Central America to the U.S. border, but their journey is only just the beginning because in 2017, 14,000 Central Americans applied for asylum in the U.S., but only 10% of Central American migrants were eventually accepted. So from there, you could almost tell the fate likely for the current ones arriving at the border. That's only part of the issue. The other issue, of course, Mr. Ambassador, is the relationship between Mexico and the United States. Remember, earlier the trade thing was already quite a hurt to the relationship, and the wall, and now you have more.
There's no doubt that President Trump's anti-Mexico tirades over the last year and a half have damaged the relationship, despite yeoman efforts by Mexican and U.S. officials to prevent the wheels falling off from the bilateral relationship. This will be another test. You have an incoming Mexican government that assumes office on Saturday, a government that so far has signaled that it will try and avoid confrontation with the U.S. president. That could be signaling to President Trump that he can push as far as he wants to on this issue of forcing Mexico to host Central American migrants. I was the ambassador who, during my tenure in the last 2 years of the Bush administration and the first full 4 years of the Obama administration, helped develop a concept which has remained as the central tenet of the U.S. Mexico bilateral relationship, which is shared responsibility. That is, these are two countries that, to successfully address a host of issues that affect us both, need to work together to jointly address these challenges. And there's no doubt that transmigration from Central America through Mexico on its way to the United States has to be dealt with in an intelligent, holistic fashion by the Mexican government.
Well,
but there has to be a quid pro quo, and seeking to appease President Trump by bending backwards and accepting a policy that will put even more strain on Mexico, on the border, is a huge challenge, particularly if we are unable to develop a long-term vision to generate security and holistic development in Central America to deter the root causes of emigration from that region through Mexico into the U.S.
Well, that has been talked for quite some time. Will that be resolved under the current administration? That probably is a bigger question mark than it used to be. Ms. Carlson, I mean, on the one hand, you heard Mr. Ambassador talking about holistic, long-term, the real root cause. On the other hand, you have the new president in Mexico coming in. That could be a clean sheet. That could be a very good beginning, but the question is next steps to come. Ms. Carlson, how much chance really is there, or on the other hand, how much challenge really is there as a result of this?
It's a very difficult challenge for the new government coming into office in just a few days. They're walking on eggs here. What's the problem is that before there can be shared responsibility, there has to be responsibility. Donald Trump is not taking responsibility for the fact that there are desperate individuals who have a right to seek asylum in the United States, and that many of them are coming as a direct result of U.S. policies in their home countries. Mexico has to take responsibility for their right to transit and for the humanitarian crisis that's being created. So there has to be responsibility on both sides. The problem the new government has is the degree of control of the U.S. government over Mexico.
Right.
We just saw that in a short tweet by saying that Donald Trump could permanently close the border. He caused the stock market to crash and the peso to fall. This is a leverage that the United States has over Mexico that gives the new government very little room for maneuver, and they're going to have to trace a new policy and a new program, but with difficult circumstances.
We have almost 25 seconds left. Ms. Al-Hussein, I hate to let you go without you having the final comments.
I think that President-elect Lopez Obrador has a wonderful idea in mind. His goal is to start negotiating the potential Marshall Plan that would help address some of the issues both in Mexico and the other Central American countries. The goal is to have the deal done by May of 2019 so that we would see true effects in 2020. And I agree with both of my other colleagues, the ambassador and my fellow scholar, that there are longer-term issues at stake, but we also need to be addressing what's happening now.
Okay. Sarukhan, Al-Hussein, and Carlson, thank you so much for the three of you for being with us.